Hey guys, welcome to the love of books, movies, and happiness. My name's April, and if you're new to the channel, then welcome. I mostly do book reviews. I'm working on adding in some more reviews of movies based off of books, so if you know of one that you're interested in me reviewing, leave a comment and let me know. Otherwise, it's just books I like or don't like, but I always try and give a fair and honest review. And this year has been a year of me trying to add in new genres, new authors, just, change it up on how I'm reading. Not necessarily my intention to start, but that's kind of how this year is unfolding, which is fine with that. I'm fine with adding in new people, new books, changing it up a bit. That's not the issue. However, when you add in new authors, new genres, you get new writing styles, you get the chance that you're not gonna like the book, which unfortunately for me, these next 5 books have been ones that I haven't enjoyed. And instead of doing an individual review on each one, I just decided to do one whole review. That being said, let's get started, guys. The first book, we have The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. This is a psychological horror. If you like Stephen King, if you like the more, like Gone Girl and books like that, or Gone with the Train, I think it is, books like that, then you're gonna like, there's a chance, I should say, you'll like this one. We have a psychologist who gets a job in the local city's dirt poor insane asylum. This is definitely not the mental hospital that the rich and famous go to. This is more the hospital, state-run, that you can't really be choosy. You get what you get. But he does this on purpose. Like, he wants to work with those that others can't necessarily help. So that's where he goes. And he's brand new pretty much. He's just starting out as a psychologist, and he needs this work experience for his resume. Well, when he gets to the city's insane asylum or mental hospital, he finds out about this one particular patient that no one seems to have really made an effort towards. It's a mystery for him because the patient's been there since childhood, and no one's really made an attempt to actually interact with him, to diagnose him. They first tried when he was a kid, and then it got to the point he just ended up in the hospital and never got out. So he finds this info, and he finds himself drawn to this patient because there is a challenge of, well, no one else has figured it out. Maybe him, with all of his new things he's learned and all the improvements in medicines, maybe he can be the one to figure out what is going on, which is how this book begins. Because he quickly realizes that everything is not as it seems. So you have within this book a variety of things touched on. You have the arrogance of someone new to a profession who's absolutely convinced that they know what they're doing more than anyone else that's been there longer. It's just overall attitude of, I can do this and you haven't figured it out and I'm going to be the one to do it. But then there's also a few other things within the book. There's the idea that things aren't what they appear to be. Your fears, your innermost fears, can be used against you in the most psychologically ways possible. This idea that evil can take on the appearance of innocent to trick people, all combined into a tale that honestly isn't horrible. Out of the 5 books I have with me today, this first one and the second one we're gonna do, they're the 2 where I'm like, they're not bad, and I'm actually giving them a decent review. This idea of 4.5 stars. It's not because it's a bad book that I won't read it again. It's just not my style. This was a recommendation. I got on Instagram threads and asked for help explaining that I was looking for an intro to horror books other than Stephen King. Nothing against Stephen King. It's just, I feel like he's such a well-known name that other horror authors get forgotten. So I wanted to try to read other books. And this was one of the first ones that came through rather quickly. I was able to find it at the library and get my hands on it. Just fine. I don't regret reading it because it's bad. It's not. It's actually good. It keeps you psychologically challenged. You definitely don't expect the end. And the character is he's different. The main guy, his attitude changes throughout, which is nice. You know, it's not an upbeat book, but then again, with the topic of it, you don't expect it to be. It is a horror book after all. My main issue with it is because it's a psychological thriller, you know, the mental hold it gets on someone it's there. You know, it's like, it really makes you think about some of like your childhood fears and the fear of what's in the closet and stuff like that. And it's the kind of book you need to read something happy for afterwards to kind of cheer things up a bit. So it's not that it's horrible. The writing's not bad. If I'm being dead honest and keeping my own personal preferences out of it, it's a decent book. And if you like psychological thrillers, I definitely recommend this. It is a shorter book, at least to me it's shorter, where it is 200, that's acknowledgments, 205 pages from start to finish. There's a few acknowledgement pages in there, and honestly the first page isn't really page 1. It's like page 3. Otherwise you get like a little postscript type thing or pre-statement. It's not a horrible book at all. It's really not. You know, it's one that I would suggest to others to check out if they want psychological. I just won't be rereading it. It's not my particular style or taste. Alright, on the book 2. This next one is another one where it was not a recommendation. It's one I found at my library. They have a bookshelf, or a few bookshelves when you first walk in, that has like the new releases or just books new to the library. Mostly new releases. This was one of them. And with it being, for me, beginning of fall, even though I know fall's not technically until the middle of this coming month, nonetheless, I'm already in the mood for fall. I picked out this one. It's labeled as a horror book, and yeah, it's like a paranormal horror, but it is a horror book. The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kist. I believe I'm saying that right. It's either Kist or Kisti, but I'm assuming it's Kist. If you know how to say the author's name and I am saying it wrong, then please, by all means, let me know I'm saying it wrong so I can fix it. What caught my interest was the overall spooky cover. Now, this really kind of spooky Halloween night type cover. I know we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I admit the cover did its job and pulled me in. Then it was the overall summary of the story that got my interest next. You know, the story talks about how there was this neighborhood. These days they're calling it the Velkwood vicinity. But it was the Velkwood neighborhood, named after the family that first moved onto the area and the land and started the neighborhood. Which one night, this whole neighborhood just vanishes behind like a darkness or a mist that just takes it over completely. This neighborhood just completely disappeared. And there's only 3 people from the neighborhood that survived because they went away. Technically 4. One person stayed in town and the others left. And for like 20 years, it's studied. We have the people that come in, the scientists in it, and they do their thing. They can't figure it out. You have the ghost hunters and groups like that come in. They can't figure it out. No one understands what happened. So they just block off the neighborhood and try and ignore it. Well, on the 20-year anniversary, a new researcher gets a grant that gives him permission to go study it. And he tracks down one of the remaining survivors, one of the girls that used to live in the neighborhood and left. Well, this story follows her journey back to her neighborhood and what happens. You know, we follow Talitha Velkwood as she agrees to go back. She's not thrilled. She agrees. Mainly because she's hoping to see her younger sister. That's her thing. She's like, maybe I'll see my baby sister. And if she's still alive, maybe I can rescue her in some way. That's what she's hoping. So she agrees to go back. There's a lot of weird things that happen within the book. It's very spooky. It's very odd. It's really hard to connect to Talitha. She's not really a character that's written in a way where she's looking for sympathy or anything like that, but I like to be able to at least, you know, have some kind of connection with the character that I'm following, right? Like, usually I like to be able to at least sit there and go, okay, I can sympathize for this character, or I can feel for her. Talitha isn't really a character I can do that. She's there and I read about her, but I don't really feel for her. It's one of the other characters in the book. She's one of the other girls who ends up helping Talitha and going back with her. And she's one of the ones that I end up connecting with more. She's not introduced until halfway through the book. The only reason I'm not giving this book a higher rating than a 4 stars out of 5 is simply because for me, the characters aren't really that easy to enjoy. You know, yeah, it's meant to be a dark story. It's meant to have its twist. And it does. And it's a great story overall. It's just, the Talitha character is very hard for me to connect to where I can feel like I'm in the story and I'm enjoying. Most stories I can get into, put myself in the main character's shoes, and I am part of it, or at least, you know, the friend of the main character, and this does not give me that feeling. Like, this book, the way it's written for me, it's more like I'm listening to it from someone from a third party, rather than I'm actually in the story. Which that could just be me. There's going to be plenty out there who pick this up and find that they highly enjoyed it. You know, I'm very well aware that everyone's reading tastes are going to be different. But I will not be rereading this again. This next one. This is another one that is new as of this year. It's by Brendan Vale, and it is Girl Among Crows. It's a very odd book, more odd than the other two, and that with the Haunting of Velkwood one, didn't think it was possible to get odder than that one, but this book proved it is very possible to get stranger than that one. So if you like references to cults, if you like more of a thrill to your horror story, this is gonna be it. This is more of a thriller, but it is a horror, and I see it, I do. But it's one of those that I really didn't enjoy. If I could go back and not read this, I would. This is one that, you know, I would go back and go, don't pick that one up. Do not waste your time. You could have checked out a different book instead. So for this one, as I said, it refers to a cult. There is killing of children within it, or the potential of children getting killed. There is just this overall chaoticness. If you're okay with that, then this is a good book to pick up. It wasn't really my thing, but we'll go over it. You know, 'cause someone may enjoy this. So, 30 years ago, there were children that were abducted from a small town. There was mentions of a cult. There was a mystery of why the police weren't informed sooner, but nothing really came of it. 30 years later, it's happening all over again. So we have Daphne, I'm gonna say Gage. It's spelled like Gauge, so maybe Gauge, Gauge, however you want to pronounce that. Daphne Gage risked her marriage, her family, and even her life to expose the truth of what's really going on with these new abductions. It's a very, not even action-packed so much as just a really chaotic messiness to this whole story that I feel like it could have been a great story. It didn't turn out that way to me. You might enjoy it. You never know. It is, once I get away from the acknowledgments and that, it is 385 pages. My issue with this book isn't that it's horrible, because it's not. The writing's decent. The chain of events is very messy. It's very hard to keep track of, and it was not one that I could actually get into. To the point that I legit skipped from chapter 4, skimmed the rest of the chapters, and then just read the last chapter to make sure there was some kind of decent ending. Definitely not for me. I don't know if I'll be checking out any other books by Brendan Vale. I might, just to see if his writing is similar in those, or if this is just different. But overall, for me, I'm giving this a 3-star rating. 3 out of 5. Our next book was an actual did not finish. I got 3 chapters into it, and then I was just like, no, I'm not even going to try reading the end. Just done with it. Which is A History of Fear by Luc Dumas. I'm assuming it's Dumas. So this is an Amazon editor's pick, apparently. Something they really recommend. I don't know. I don't know if I trust that. It's mystery thriller. They labeled it as a horror. Yeah, it's all 3 of those from what I did read, but it's just one that I didn't get into. Wasn't really enjoying it when I did, and ended up after like chapter 3 or 4 just I'm done. That's it. So we have Grayson Hale, the most infamous murderer in Scotland, better known as the Devil's Advocate. The 25-year-old American grad student rose to instant notoriety when he confessed to the slaughter of his classmate Liam Stewart, claiming the devil made him do it. When Hale is found hanged in his prison cell, officers uncover a handwritten manuscript that promises to answer the question that's haunted the nation for years. Was Hale a lunatic? Or had he been telling the truth all along? Unnervingly, Hale does not fit the bill of a killer. The first-person narrative that centers this novel reveals a young atheist newly enrolled at the University of Edinburgh to carry on the legacy of his recently deceased father. In need of cash, he takes a job ghostwriting a mysterious book for a dark stranger, but has misgivings when the project begins to reawaken his Satanophobia, a rare condition that causes him to live in terror that the devil is after him. As he struggles to disentangle fact from fear, Grayson's world is turned upside down after events force him to confront his growing suspicion that he's working for the one who he's feared all this time. and that the book is only the beginning of their partnership. So, Grayson Hale is the main character that we follow. And it kind of goes between his life and then switches over to moments when he's already in prison, then switches over to the psychiatrist talking to the investigators after his death, and then goes back to his life. So it's a first-person story that still likes to switch around. And the writing is good, the writing style is good, the story is odd. You know, it kind of switches between his present life and his childhood. And you follow him through his descent into madness, pretty much. My only reason really for giving this a 2 out of 5 star review is that as interesting as the story is, as well written as it is, the flow of the story is not there for me. Grayson is a character that you kind of don't really like from the very first page. Whether or not you feel like he's an outright criminal or you feel like he was someone with mental issues, you just, from the very first page, you're kind of meant to not like him. And it continues that way. There's no real moments of anything pleasant within the book. Like, the whole thing is, yeah, it's a horror book. I get that. Before anyone says anything, I understand that a horror book is dark. But this just starts out kind of gray mood-wise and then just goes into just blah. And it stays that way. So it is definitely one where I picked it up to read it, thought it sounded kind of cool, just couldn't get into the author, couldn't get into the writing, and really couldn't get into the character. It's one I would go back and tell myself, don't read. Now, I'm not saying no one should read this. I would never say that about a book. You know, that sounded, my summary that I read from the back of this, if that sounded like something that interests you, then go check it out. See for yourself if you're gonna like it. It's just on my list of never pick up again. Ever. Because you are not the one. Alright, we are down to the last book of my 5. So for this one, I like a good story that has like a mystery and a twist. You know, people vanishing, but are they really gone or are they still around? Were they really killed? Was it humans? Was it paranormal? That's what drew me to this, right? The Girls Who Disappeared by Claire Douglas. So this one centers around the idea that 20 years ago, 4 girls were in a car driving home. Something happens, there's an accident, and only 1 girl survives. The other 3 just vanish. Like, police can track that they all went out together. They were seen leaving together, but in the middle of a road that's not known for good things, surrounded by woods that are known to be haunted, mysterious sounds have been heard, the sounds of children when there should be no children, that kind of thing. These 3 girls just vanish. And the remaining girl doesn't talk about it. Every once in a while, reporters come through on the anniversary asking what happened, trying to find the answer. The one survivor just doesn't usually talk, or she ignores them. But now we have a new journalist who's coming through, who's trying to do a deep dive into the story. You know, was it paranormal? Is there a possibility the girls could have gone walking through the woods? Was there a serial killer? You know, she's trying to find these. Well, we have the journalist Jenna, who books a cabin in the town near the wood, and quickly finds out that the locals don't want to talk to her, and they don't want her around. Least of all, Olivia, the survivor. But it's not Olivia that Jenna has to watch out for. Olivia's sometimes very odd boyfriend, Sam, is the one that's kind of from day one I'm a little suspicious of. he's the one that tries to keep Jenna away. He's the one that makes it clear that he doesn't want Jenna talking to Olivia, and it's just very obvious from the beginning that he's not that great of a person. This is a very intriguing story in the sense that it draws you in. You want to know what happened. You want to find out what happened to the girls, and then what's happening to Jenna, and eventually Olivia. And there are some very surprising twists within the story. Like, not even the middle of the book, but about 3/4 of the way through, you hit your first twist. And then as you go, you get more twists. So it's a good book. If you enjoy a mystery with a bunch of twists, then yeah, go ahead and pick it up. This, if I'm being completely honest without my own preferences mixed in, I give this a 4-star review. 3.5 4-star. My main reason for not wanting to read this again is, while it was enjoyable, I felt like halfway through, it just goes from engaging you and pulling you in to it just starts to fall flat. Yeah, there's the twist that I spoke of, but by the time you get to the last chapter, the twists, they're there, but they don't really work to keep you engaged by that point. It's almost like you have a souffle that you're baking, and it's rising, and it's, because they're supposed to be the big puffy tops or whatever. Pretty sure that's a souffle. But it's rising and it's doing its thing, and then somewhere along the line, someone just comes along and pokes it with a needle and just flattens. And that's kind of what happens with this. Like, it's got your twist almost from not even halfway through the book, and towards the middle of the story, it goes from being intriguing to just, then it starts to drag. I know I said like a 4-star rating, story-wise, yeah. The keeping you going and the staying focused, it's 2 stars. The characters would be like a 4-star for well-written characters. The author does a good job of making you dislike a couple characters. So overall, I'm going to change my rating from 4 to a 3.8 overall for the book. Not the worst. Like I said, there's going to be plenty out there that enjoy this book. I don't regret reading it, but I will not be picking it up and reading it again. Alright guys, as we know, you're gonna have these moments where you're going through and you get several that you're just like, why did I read that? What was the point? This was a waste, or I just can't finish it. Unfortunately for me, those 5 were essentially all from the same library trip, and I read them back to back. I'm sure they're all great authors in their own right, just maybe not necessarily for me. So those are 5 books that I will not be rereading. My next review, I've not read this yet. I just got this from the library this last trip. My next review will be An Intrigue of Witches by Esme Addison. It's a mystery. Apparently it's a secret society mystery. Probably by tonight, I'll be starting this story. And most likely by next week, I'll have a review for it. So keep an eye out on that one, guys. If you're curious, as I am, on what happens with Sydney Taylor, what did she do or discover that makes her unwelcome in her job? What invitation does she receive, and what answer blows her world apart? You know, I'm curious on that. So we'll find out. And once I find out, I'll do a review and let you guys know as well. Alright, guys. Until next time, keep reading.